Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Max, Chief Evangelist over here at Hapily. Got a little bit of a different video for you here today. What I'm going to be doing is sort of breaking down the differences of using Eventbrite integrated with HubSpot, and then also using Event Hapily to literally run your events on HubSpot, and sort of the pros and cons of both. I got a big list here. I'm going to kind of like run through as much as I can. So hopefully if you're someone who's currently using Eventbrite and you want to integrate it with HubSpot, but you're seeing some maybe inefficiencies in the way that works and you're looking for a better way to do it, I think we've got a great alternative here in the form of Event Hapily, which is our event management platform built for HubSpot. It quite literally turns HubSpot into an event management platform, right? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to kind of just like start at the top. And we are going to kind of go through some of the big differences in terms of, when you're just using Eventbrite and it integrates with HubSpot versus using Event Hapily and doing it all natively within HubSpot. Cool. So the first thing I want to talk about here is like registration, right? And how it actually works, in both apps. With Eventbrite, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is go and build your event, and then people sign up through these landing pages that get generated by Eventbrite, right? The thing that's kind of tough about that is a couple things. Mostly is really just the way the registration manifests itself inside of HubSpot. Okay. With Eventbrite, you can ask a couple of different questions on the form, things like that. You can collect more information, but unfortunately, none of that information makes its way into HubSpot in the form of contact properties or anything. The only stuff that it actually shows in HubSpot is one, contact properties that show the latest event they registered for, and I believe the latest attended event that they went to. But unfortunately, that data gets overwritten every single time someone registers for another event or attends another event, which makes things like reporting and automation and segmentation pretty difficult. So the other thing is that the way it represents the registration in HubSpot is lacking a little bit of rich data, right? It's kind of tough. So just to kind of show you, I built an event here, and then I integrated Eventbrite with HubSpot, and this is kind of all we get, right? The Eventbrite integration uses the marketing events object inside of HubSpot. Now, the marketing events object is not that great, right? And because of that, this integration is not that great, okay? If I want to see, for example, people who registered for the event, it's pretty easy. I can hit on this registrations button right here. And this is what it shows me. It shows me an email address under a column called name. I can't customize this. I can't say, hey, how did they answer the different questions that I had on there? What, right? It just puts them on this very basic list. Now, I can go and build lists in HubSpot based on this information. But again, all it's telling me is like, hey, someone registered for your event. If they attend the event, maybe it'll slap it into this attendees area over here, right? But again, it's I got to manage that attendance outside of HubSpot, right? I have to go and use their Eventbrite app and all that kind of stuff, right? So this is pretty underwhelming, right? Let me show you kind of like the difference of how registration works inside of HubSpot and kind of some of the benefits of that. So Event Hapily, what we do is we actually let you build your registration pages through HubSpot, right? The place where you're already building your landing pages, your website content, all that kind of stuff. And we give you full control to capture all that data and all the questions that you're asking on those actual forms, right? So you can build HubSpot forms, and then you can use some of our really cool CMS modules we created to basically choose which event someone signs up for when they fill the form out. And we automatically take care of all of the registration stuff in the background. And what happens is that information shows up as registrant objects inside of HubSpot, and they're properly represented, and they have all of the data. So, for example, let me pop into one of my other, accounts here. I'll go to our test account, and I'll show you an example of the registrant data. So instead of simply just showing an email address, right, we actually show you who it was, which event they signed up for. You can capture feedback from these people. You get all the information that they filled out in the form. For example, t-shirt size. You get a QR code that you can use to check people in. We'll talk about that later, right? Any questions, dietary restrictions, whatever it is, all that stuff gets properly represented in HubSpot in what we call a registrant record. That registrant record tells you which event they signed up for. Did they sign up for any additional sessions at the actual event itself? Speaking of sessions, This is also something you can't really manage that well with Eventbrite integrated with HubSpot. Now, in Eventbrite, to give it credit, it does have this feature called Agenda. Now, with Agenda, you can add different, I guess, what we would call sessions, right? With Event Happily, we think of sessions as like the little individual parts of your event that people can sign up for. So if you're doing more of like a conference and there's like a breakout session or like different tracks people can go down, right? And maybe there's some like required stuff that everybody goes to. All that stuff gets properly represented in a session record inside of HubSpot. So when I'm looking at my events, so I'll just come over to this one, for example, and I go to this Happily Palooza one, right? We can see the different sessions of the event over on the right-hand side. In this case, I just have one, right? But you could have multiple sessions. People can register for all those individual sessions of the event, not just the event itself, right? And they can also have their attendance individually tracked for all those different sessions at your event. Whereas with Eventbrite, you're simply building an agenda, which is something that will show on the actual registration page to give an idea of what the itinerary of the event is, but none of this stuff actually gets represented inside of HubSpot, right? So if you want to use that data to spark any sort of automation or segmentation or use it in any meaningful way, you're out of luck, right? So that's another pretty tough thing. Right. So again, the other thing, too, is like all of this data going into HubSpot, there isn't proper representations of these things. Like when we think about a registration, that time Max went to inbound. Right. That is a unique thing that has a lot of attributes about it. Right. It's a historical record of a time that I went or registered and went to a specific event. Right. And there's individual unique information about that I want to be able to use in the future. That's really tough to do when you're using a marketing event object with the Eventbrite integration, and all that stuff is like hidden in the background, and all they do is give you a list with people's emails on it. It's really, really tough to do much of that, right? Now, speaking of the use of this marketing event object, the other thing that's really, really tough about using this with the Eventbrite integration is that you can't customize these records at all. Okay, you cannot change anything on them. You might be able to change the left-hand side. In fact, I think you could edit the left-hand sidebar. I might even be wrong about that, but I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt, and let's say you can do that, right? One of the best parts about using Event Happily is we use custom objects to represent these different things, right? So for example, when we go to our event records, right, these are real, full custom objects, which means you can customize them like crazy to serve whatever purpose you need to represent your event data, right? So for example, if you want a tab to show all your different sessions, you can build it. If you want a tab to show all of the registration information and you want to customize the way all this data sits on your records, you can do that. If you want to be able to measure return on investment of your events and create a way for you to, track expenses or even just like hold information about how much the event costs and then compare that against deals that are automatically getting associated to it, right? Which you can't do with the marketing events object, right? It really gives you all of the customization and flexibility that you need to be able to measure what's important to you around your event management strategy. Something you cannot do when the main object that represents the event itself is so rigid in the way that it's deployed, which is this marketing events object, right? I can't put whatever sort of customization or single object reports or choose what I do and do not see. I can't make anything conditional. It's literally just saying, here's how many registrations you got. Here's how many cancellations you got. Here's how many attendees you got. And that's basically it, right? I can trigger some basic, simple automation on this for contacts that are associated to these events, but I can't automate anything about the event itself. I can't build a automation around the event. I can't build an automation around registrants getting created. I can't build an automation around, being able to, send out individual emails to people who signed up to specific sessions because that data is not represented properly, right? But with Event Happily, it is, right? So to give you an example here, with the data structure that we have, right, where we have individual representations of the event, the registrant, the session, I can build workflows that center around these objects. For example, I could build an event-based workflow that would say, 5 days before an event starts, send an email out to anybody who's registered for the event saying, hey, Can't wait to see you at the event, right? I could do a registrant-based workflow that says, as soon as a registrant object is created, send them an email with personalization tokens from the actual event itself, and also send them over their QR code so they can scan it. Speaking of QR codes, we have a lot of really great, easy ways out of the box that you can track attendance directly inside of HubSpot. So if I go to any of my registrant objects here, so I'll go to a registrant, right? I'll go find Max right here. Cool. Automatically, these registrant objects get their own QR code, which you can then slam into an email using a personalization token. And every single time someone registers for an event, you scan the QR code and it marks them as attended inside of HubSpot, right? So we can easily track through a QR code. If you don't want to do QR code scanning and you want to be more like the bouncer at the door saying, hey, are you on the list? Yes, no, and track attendance that way, we can automatically generate check-in pages, right? So let me come into here. I'll go to one of my events. We'll go to this test event right here. And then I can bring up my in-person check-in page, and you can easily share this link with anyone who's in charge of checking people in at the event. You can set these up to work dynamically. So the second you create an event, you have a place someone can go to actually track someone's attendance, and you can either check them in, you can hit undo if it was a mistake and uncheck them in, and you will see inside of HubSpot that they've registered as attended, or they've registered for the event, but they're also marked as attended for the event, right? So we have everything you need inside of HubSpot to be able to put on like in-person or virtual events, because this also works with Zoom, directly inside of HubSpot. Another really big thing, like in terms of like Event Hapily versus Eventbrite, is that we're also great for companies that are doing lead capture at events, right? So if you're a company that goes to a lot of different trade shows, or you're a company that goes to a lot of different conferences, right? You can easily just go there and capture leads, right? So let's take a look at this trade show right here, right? You can see that I have contacts associated to these events as event leads. And the way that this works is we have this workflow action called capture event lead, where you can use a HubSpot form, capture someone as a lead by filling out their information, and they automatically get associated back to this event as an event lead instead of someone registering for an event itself, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can set this up. The other thing too, to kind of point out, kind of going back to workflows really quick, is there is no way through a HubSpot workflow to sign someone up for an Eventbrite event, right? Whereas we make it super easy with the different workflows that we have to allow folks to actually just build simple workflows that register people for events if you don't want to use our forms module, for example, or if you have a more complicated way people get registered for events. Maybe it's not something as simple as someone filling out a form, right? Maybe there's some information in the background that you're using to say, hey, if this person's on this list or this type of customer, or someone talks to them or hits a button internally and you want to register someone for an event, you can easily do that just by building workflows. So if you come into our contact-based workflows here, right, what you can do is if we hit start or plus, then we come down here, we have this register for event workflow action. And all you do is select an event that you've created inside of HubSpot. And then you can even choose individual sessions you want to sign people up for, right? So depending on how someone fills out a form, you can set them down one track where they get certain sessions, set them down another track where they get others, or you can do this all dynamically through our form modules, and you don't even have to build workflows if you don't want to. But for those more complicated event registration scenarios, we've got you covered, right? Whereas Eventbrite, you got to do everything through their registration forms. Right. Another thing that's going to be really, really tough with Eventbrite is they have no way to kind of like tie back to your sales data, right? Whereas we have a whole bunch of workflows that make things much easier for you, right? So I'll go ahead here and I'm going to create a deal-based workflow to give you an example, right? So something that you can do when you're tracking people attending events inside of HubSpot and you want to see if any deals got influenced by those events, we have this attribute deal to event workflow action. And what this is going to do is, since you're tracking your events inside of HubSpot using our attendance tracking mechanisms, or you're capturing people as leads at different events, what you can do is you can use this workflow action to basically say, hey, if a deal gets created, I want to associate the very first event that happened within, I don't know, let's say 365 days where someone actually attended the event, right? And you could build your own attribution models, right? But since it's all contained within HubSpot and controlled by us, it's easy for us to be able to do the automation in the background to ensure that based on your own mental model around deal attribution, we can associate those deals to the events those people actually went to just by looking at the contact record and analyzing their event history and matching it up to whatever sort of parameters you put into this workflow action. And you can build a bunch of different ones to handle different scenarios. It's totally up to you how you kind of run this, right? But we give you the power and the juice that HubSpot really needs to be able to be an event management system, right? Which it isn't out of the box, right? But we quite literally turn it into one so you can run your digital events, your in-person events, and your, event and conference trade show lead capture, right? All directly within HubSpot, right? So if you're an Eventbrite user out there, or you're considering Eventbrite and you know that integrating it with HubSpot is going to be a crucial step, right? Maybe take a second and take a look at Event Happily, right? And let us know if you have any questions. But anyway, I hope that was helpful if you're someone looking into kind of the differences between using Eventbrite integrated with HubSpot or potentially use an Event Happily. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. We're happy to help you out, or get in touch with us, care@hapily.com. We're here to help you out. Thanks, everybody.